The stench hits me first, rotting vegetables and what smells like week-old fish, all of it dripping down the pristine black paint of my new Mercedes. Not my Mercedes, actually. Mr. Thompson's Mercedes. The one he'd specifically asked me to keep safe while he was away at his conference. I stand there, frozen, watching chunks of garbage slide down the hood, leaving trails of putrid juice in their wake. The parking lot lights cast everything in a sickly yellow glow, making the mess look even more grotesque. My hands shake as I reach for my phone to document the damage. Oh dear, what a terrible accident. The voice comes from behind me, dripping with false concern. I don't need to turn around to know it's Helen, my mother-in-law, emerging from the shadows like some bargain basement villain. Such a shame about your new car. This isn't my car. The words come out through clenched teeth. It's Mr. Thompson's. Mark's boss. There's a moment of silence and I savor it. For once, Helen Sanders is speechless. I turn to face her, catching the exact moment her smug satisfaction crumbles into something closer to fear. What did you say? Her voice has lost its theatrical frailty. You heard me. You just vandalized the car of the man who controls your precious son's entire career. I take a step closer, my phone still recording. Tell me, Helen, how long have you been following me? Waiting in the dark like some deranged stalker. She backs away, her designer handbag clutched to her chest like a shield. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just taking my evening walk dash. At 11 at night? In the office parking lot? I laugh, but there's no humor in it. You know what? I'm done. I'm done pretending you're just a difficult mother-in-law. This is criminal. You wouldn't dare say anything, she hisses, dropping the fragile act entirely. Mark would never believe you over his own mother. Maybe not. I step aside, gesturing at the ruined car. But Mr. Thompson's security cameras might be more convincing. Her face goes pale. I watch as she glances around, finally noticing the cameras mounted on the building's corners. The same cameras I'd helped install last month as part of the office's security upgrade. Emily, dear, she tries again, her voice honey-sweet. Surely we can work something out. This is all just a misunderstanding dash. Save it. I hold up my hand. You know what the funny thing is? I actually bought this for you. I pull out a small gift bag from my car. It's your birthday next week. I spent 3 months taking extra piano students to afford this bracelet. Because despite everything, I wanted to try. I wanted to be family. I toss the bag at her feet. The box spills out, revealing the delicate silver bracelet inside. Helen stares at it, then at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Emily dash. Don't. I turn back to the ruined car, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. You wanted war? Congratulations, Helen. You've got one. I hear her hurried footsteps retreating across the parking lot, but I don't watch her go. Instead, I dial Mark's number, knowing exactly how this conversation will go. He'll defend her, make excuses, tell me I'm overreacting. Just like always. But this time is different. This time I have proof. And more importantly, this time, I'm not backing down. The phone rings once, twice. I take a deep breath, straightening my spine. Hey, Mark. We need to talk about your mother. You're being ridiculous. Mark paces our bedroom, running his hands through his hair. Mom wouldn't do something like that. She's not some cartoon villain. I stare at my phone, the video evidence right there on the screen. I literally showed you the footage. She admitted it was her, Mark. She thought it was my car. She's going through a rough time. Dad's retirement, losing the house, you know how stressed she's been. He stops pacing to look at me. His expression a perfect mirror of Helen's manipulative concern. Maybe if you made more of an effort dash. The laugh that escapes me is sharp enough to cut glass. More effort? I cook their meals. I clean their laundry. I rearranged my entire life when they moved in, and your mother still treats me like something she scraped off her shoe. That's not fair, Dash. What's not fair is coming home to find your mother reorganizing my kitchen for the 3rd time this week because apparently I can't even stack plates correctly. I stand up, my hands shaking. What's not fair is her, accidentally, shrinking my favorite sweater in the wash after I refused to let her redecorate our bedroom. Mark's face hardens. So you're saying my mother deliberately ruined Mr. Thompson's car to get back at you for? What? Putting the plates in the wrong place? I'm saying your mother is Dash. The words die in my throat as Helen appears in our doorway, wrapped in her silk robe, looking frail and concerned. I heard raised voices, she says softly. Is everything all right? Mark immediately moves to her side. It's fine, Mom. Emily's just upset about some vandalism at work. Oh, how awful. Helen presses a hand to her chest. You must be so shaken up, dear. Why don't I make you some tea? I grab my car keys from the dresser. I'm going to Jessica's. Emily, Mark starts, but I'm already pushing past them both. Don't wait up. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting in Jessica's kitchen, watching her pour wine into coffee mugs because all her glasses are packed for her upcoming move. So let me get this straight, she says, sliding a mug toward me. Your mother-in-law trashed your boss's car, thinking it was yours, and your husband is defending her? He thinks I'm making it up. I take a long drink, even with video evidence. Show me again. I pull up the footage on my phone. Jessica watches, her expression darkening. That manipulative witch. She hands my phone back. What are you going to do about the car? I already called the insurance company. They're picking it up tomorrow morning. I rest my head on her kitchen table. Mr. Thompson gets back next week. I have no idea how to explain this. Tell him the truth. And risk Mark's job? Helen would love that. Jessica is quiet for a moment, studying me. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you actually felt happy in your own home? The question hits like a punch to the gut. I try to remember, but all I can see is Helen's smug smile, Mark's constant excuses, the slow erosion of everything I once loved about my life. I used to play piano every evening, I say finally. Before they moved in, Helen said the noise gave her migraines. And Mark? Said I should be more considerate. Jessica reaches across the table, squeezing my hand. Emily, honey, this isn't just about a vandalized car. This is about Dash. My phone buzzes. A text from Mark. Mom's really upset. She made your favorite cookies. Please come home. Another buzz. We can talk about this tomorrow. Family needs to stick together. I show Jessica the messages. She reads them, then looks at me with fierce determination. You know what? No. You're staying here tonight. And tomorrow, we're going to figure out how to get your life back. I stare at my phone as another message comes in, this time from Helen. So sorry about our misunderstanding, dear. Let's start fresh tomorrow. My fingers hover over the keyboard before I switch off the phone entirely. For the first time in months, the silence feels like freedom. The envelope falls from Mark's desk drawer like a confession, spilling bank statements and foreclosure notices across our bedroom floor. I shouldn't be snooping, but after 3 days at Jessica's, I needed answers. Now I have them, just not the ones I expected. 6 months. The dates on these papers show Mark knew about his parents' financial troubles 6 months before they moved in. 6 months of him watching me renovate my piano room into their bedroom, never saying a word about why they really needed to live with us. My hands shake as I read through the documents. Their house wasn't just foreclosed. They'd remortgaged it 3 times, burned through their retirement fund, and maxed out 5 credit cards. The final notice is dated 2 weeks before Helen's first, casual, suggestion that they should move into, help us save for our future. Emily? Richard's voice in the hallway makes me jump. I scramble to gather the papers, but he's already in the doorway. His eyes move from the scattered documents to my face, and something in his expression crumples. I see you found out. You all lied to me. The words taste like acid. Every single one of you. Richard closes the door quietly behind him. Helen doesn't know I know about the papers. She thinks I believe we moved in to help you and Mark start a family. How convenient for her. I shove the papers back into their envelope. Did she also convince herself that harassing me was for my own good? I'm sorry. He sinks onto the edge of the bed, suddenly looking every bit his age. I should have stopped her years ago. But Helen, when she gets an idea in her head. Save it. I stand up, the envelope clutched to my chest like armor. I don't need your apologies. I need the truth. All of it. He nods slowly. The gambling started after I retired. Helen said she was just playing bridge with her friends, but then the credit card bills started coming. I confronted her once. He rubs his wrist absently. She threw a vase at me. The admission hangs in the air between us. I think about Helen's carefully cultivated image, the fragile mother, the devoted wife, the wronged mother-in-law. How many others had seen through it? How many had stayed silent? Does Mark know about the gambling? No. Richard won't meet my eyes. Helen convinced him we lost everything in bad investments. He believes she's the victim in all this. A laugh bubbles up in my throat, bitter as coffee grounds. Of course he does. That's what Helen does, isn't it? Turns everyone into either a victim or a villain. Emily Dash. The front door slams downstairs, followed by Helen's voice calling out. Richard? Where are you, dear? I need help with these groceries. Richard stands quickly, panic flashing across his face. Please, don't tell her you know. She'll dash. She'll what? I step closer, lowering my voice. Throw another vase? Destroy another car? What exactly are you afraid of, Richard? He opens his mouth to respond, but Helen's footsteps are already on the stairs. I stuff the envelope into my bag just as she appears in the doorway. There you are. Her smile freezes when she sees me. Emily, dear. Back from your little vacation? Just getting some clothes. I shoulder past her, but she grabs my arm. We should talk, she says softly, her fingers digging into my skin. Clear the air about that unfortunate misunderstanding. I look down at her hand, then back at her face. Let go of me, Helen. Or the next car I report vandalized won't be Mr. Thompson's. Her grip tightens for a moment before she releases me, her mask of concern never slipping. I'm only trying to help, dear. This family needs to stick together. No, I say, finally understanding the truth. This family needs to stop enabling you. I leave her standing there, Richard silent behind her. As I reach the stairs, I hear him speak, so quietly I almost miss it. She's right, Helen. This has to stop. The silence that follows is deafening. I don't stay to hear it break. The migraine hits during another one of Helen's dinner parties. My vision blurs as I serve her bridge club their third round of cocktails, their voices drilling into my skull like ice picks. Someone, probably Barbara from next door, compliments Helen on her wonderful daughter-in-law, and I nearly drop the tray. Oh yes, Helen simpers, Emily's such a help around the house. Though she did give up her little piano hobby. So considerate of her, knowing how the noise affects my nerves. The room spins. I steady myself against the wall, but not before Helen notices. Her eyes narrow with calculated concern. Dear, you look terrible. Perhaps you should lie down. I'm fine. The words come out sharper than intended. One of Helen's friends tuts sympathetically. You really should rest, dear. Helen mentioned you've been quite emotional lately. The doorbell saves me from responding. I escape to answer it, only to find Mr. Thompson on our doorstep, looking grave. Emily, he says quietly. May I have a word? We step onto the porch, away from the cackling bridge club. My head pounds in time with my pulse. The insurance company called, he continues. They're denying the claim. Apparently, someone suggested the damage was self-inflicted. The world tilts sideways. What? They received an anonymous tip. His eyes are kind but serious, along with some rather creative theories about why you might damage my car for attention. Helen's voice drifts through the open window. Poor Emily, she's been so unstable since we moved in. Mark's at his wit's end. Mr. Thompson watches my face. I see you might have some idea who's behind this. I can explain, Dash. He holds up a hand. No need. I've known Helen Sanders longer than you have. 20 years ago, she nearly destroyed another young woman's career with similar tactics. He pauses. That woman was my daughter. The revelation hits like a physical blow. What happened? She left town. Changed her name. Last I heard, she was teaching music in Seattle. He smiles slightly. Rather successfully, I might add. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been looking for a piano teacher. He hands me a business card. My arthritis makes it hard to play, but I miss music. And I have a rather nice grand piano gathering dust. I stare at the card, understanding slowly dawning. Helen would never allow Dash. Helen doesn't need to know. His voice hardens. Sometimes, Emily, the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's surviving. Thriving, even. Inside, Helen's laughter rings out again. I touch my temple, where the migraine pulses like a second heartbeat. Think about it, Mr. Thompson says, turning to leave. Oh, and Emily? The insurance claim? I'll handle it personally. That night, I lie awake listening to Helen and Mark argue downstairs. Their voices drift up through the heating vent. She's becoming a liability, Mark. First the car incident, now these dizzy spells at work. Mom, please Dash. I'm just saying, if she can't handle the stress of a simple administrative job, perhaps it's time she focused on home life. We could help support you both. I press my palms against my eyes until stars burst behind my eyelids. The migraine has faded to a dull throb, but something else is building in its place, something that feels dangerously like hope. My phone buzzes with a text from Jessica. Lunch tomorrow? Found something interesting in those bank statements you showed me. Another buzz, this time from an unknown number. Lesson scheduled for Tuesday, 2 p.m. Address attached. Thompson. Downstairs, Helen's voice rises. Really, Mark, you need to take control of this situation before Dash. I reach for my phone, typing quickly. I'll be there. Both appointments. The voices continue below, but for the first time in months, I don't bother listening. Instead, I pull out my old sheet music from its hiding place under the mattress and begin to plan. Mr. Thompson's grand piano gleams in the afternoon light, its polished surface reflecting my hands as they hover over the keys. 3 weeks of secret lessons, and already the weight in my chest feels lighter when I'm here. Your technique is excellent, he says, watching me work through a particularly challenging passage. Though you seem distracted today. I miss a note, my fingers stumbling. Jessica found something in Helen's bank records. There's a pattern of large withdrawals every Friday, always from the same casino. He adjusts his reading glasses. And you're planning to use this information? I opened my own account yesterday. The keys feel cool under my fingertips. Started moving my savings a little at a time. Helen's been going through my things. I found my dresser rearranged again. He nods, understanding, darkening his expression. My daughter said similar things before Dash. The doorbell interrupts us. Through the window, I catch a glimpse of Helen's perfectly coiffed hair. Quick, Mr. Thompson whispers, the study. I grab my bag and slip into his wood-paneled study just as he opens the front door. Helen's voice drifts in, honey-sweet and concerned. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I'm looking for Emily. She's been so forgetful lately, missing her doctor's appointments. I haven't seen her. His tone is perfectly neutral. Though I did hear piano music from the Peterson house next door earlier. Piano? Helen's voice sharpens. How? Interesting. Emily told us she'd given that up. I press my back against the study wall, heart hammering. Through a crack in the door, I watch Helen drift toward the grand piano, her fingers trailing across its surface. Beautiful instrument, she murmurs. Shame about the dust. I rarely play these days. Arthritis. Of course. She opens her purse, removing something. Oh, would you mind giving Emily this when you see her? It's her anxiety medication. She really shouldn't skip doses. My blood runs cold. I've never taken anxiety medication in my life. I'll be sure she gets it. Mr. Thompson's voice remains steady, but I see his hands clench slightly. After Helen leaves, I emerge from the study, shaking. She's setting me up, making it look like I'm unstable medicated. Emily. He hands me the pill bottle. Look at the date. The prescription was filled yesterday, in my name. My hands tremble as I read the label. How did she? Your friend Jessica should look into Helen's connections at the local pharmacy. He takes the bottle, examining it. This is a serious medication. The kind that might make someone seem unreliable, especially if they were making accusations about a respected member of the community. I sink onto the piano bench, the magnitude of Helen's plan hitting me. She's trying to discredit me before I can expose her. The question is, he says quietly, what are you going to do about it? My fingers find the keys again, playing the first few notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The melody feels different now, less mournful, more determined. I have another lesson next week, I say, continuing to play. Same time. He smiles slightly. I'll make sure Helen sees me at the country club that afternoon. Playing bridge, perhaps. I reach the crescendo, letting the music fill the room. Each note feels like a small act of defiance. My phone buzzes. A text from Mark. Mom says you missed your doctor's appointment. Everything okay? Another message follows. She's worried about you. We all are. I look at Mr. Thompson, who's watching me with knowing eyes. Sometimes, I say, echoing his words from weeks ago, the best revenge isn't confrontation. And sometimes, he adds, it's letting your enemies think they're winning. I turn back to the piano, starting the piece again. This time, I play it exactly as Helen would hate, loud, passionate, and impossible to ignore. The piano studio receipt flutters from Helen's hand to the kitchen table between us. Mark stands in the doorway, his face a mask of betrayal I've seen too many times, only now it's directed at me. You've been lying to us. Helen's voice trembles with perfectly practiced hurt. Sneaking around, teaching piano while I worried myself sick about your mental health. Teaching piano isn't a crime. My voice sounds strange in my ears, too calm. Maybe it's because I've rehearsed this moment so many times in my head. No, Mark cuts in, but stealing from my bosses. The accusation hits like a physical blow. What? Helen slides another paper across the table, a bank statement showing transfers from Mr. Thompson's account to mine. He's elderly, Emily. Vulnerable. Did you think nobody would notice? Those are legitimate payments for dash. For what? Mark's voice rises. Taking advantage of a man with dementia? Mom told me he doesn't even play piano anymore. The room tilts sideways as understanding dawns. Helen's been planning this, laying groundwork I never saw coming. Every concerned comment about my stability, every mention of Mr. Thompson's age, it was all building to this moment. Call him, I say. Call Mr. Thompson right now and ask him. We did. Helen's eyes gleam with triumph. He seemed quite confused about the whole thing. Mentioned something about you helping with his medication. My hands begin to shake. The prescription bottle, she's twisted everything around, made me look like. I found these too. Mark dumps a handful of pill bottles on the table, all in my name, all from different doctors. Were you planning to sell these? Is that what this is about? I've never seen those before. But even as I say it, I know how it sounds. Desperate. Guilty. You need help, Emily. Helen reaches for my hand. I jerk away, knocking over my chair as I stand. Don't touch me. See. Helen turns to Mark. These mood swings, the paranoia. This is exactly what I've been worried about. I'm calling Dr. Matthews, Mark says, pulling out his phone. He said to contact him immediately if you became agitated. What doctor? I don't have a doctor. The words come out too loud, too frantic. Helen flinches theatrically. Please, Emily, she whispers. Think about what this is doing to Mark. To his career. If word gets out about the money. The threat hangs in the air. I look at Mark, searching for any sign of the man I married, but his eyes are already glazed with his mother's version of reality. I'm leaving, I announce, grabbing my keys. You can't drive in this state. Mark moves to block the door. Mom's right. You need help. Get out of my way. Emily dash. I said move. I shove past him, harder than intended. He stumbles, catching himself on the doorframe. Helen gasps. She's becoming violent. Mark, do something. I run. Through the house, past Richard standing frozen in the hallway, out into the evening air. Behind me, I hear Mark on the phone. Yes, doctor. No, she's never been this bad before. My car won't start. Of course it won't. They've thought of everything. My phone buzzes with a text from Jessica. 911. Thompson's in hospital. Helen's saying you dash. I don't finish reading. Instead, I start walking, then running, my feet carrying me away from the house that was never really my home. The sun sets behind me, casting my shadow long and distorted across the pavement. Another text buzzes. Where are you? Everyone's worried sick. Helen's voice echoes in my head. Think about what this is doing to Mark. To his career. I turn off my phone and keep walking. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wail. Jessica's apartment feels too small for all the tension crackling through it. Richard sits hunched on her couch, hands trembling as he sets down a manila envelope. I've kept copies, he says quietly. Of everything. The gambling receipts, the forged prescriptions, the threatening emails Helen sent to Mr. Thompson's daughter 20 years ago. My throat tightens. Why now? Because Mr. Thompson didn't have a fall. Richard's voice cracks. Helen switched his blood pressure medication. I found the pills in her purse and I can't anymore. The door buzzes. Jessica checks the security camera and nods. Moments later, Mark bursts in, followed by Helen. Emily, thank God. Mark reaches for me, but I step back. We've been worried sick dash. Shut up, Mark. The words come out sharp enough to make him flinch. For once in your life, just shut up and listen. Helen moves forward, her face a mask of maternal concern. Dear, you're clearly not well dash. Here. Richard stands, pushing the envelope toward Mark. Read it. All of it. Helen freezes. Richard, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago. He turns to Mark. Your mother didn't lose our money in bad investments. She gambled it away. Every penny. Including your college fund. Mark stares at the casino receipts spilling from the envelope. Mom? He's lying. But Helen's voice has lost its theatrical frailty. Richard's always been jealous of my relationship with you, Dash. Like you were jealous of Mr. Thompson's daughter? I cut in. The one you drove out of town with false accusations? Right before he was about to make her partner in the firm instead of your husband. Color drains from Helen's face. How did you dash? He told me everything. I step forward. Just like he's going to tell the police about his fall once the toxicology report comes back. You can't prove anything. Helen's mask slips completely, revealing something ugly beneath. It's my word against yours, and everyone knows you're unstable, Dash. Actually, Jessica speaks up, holding up her phone. I think the police will be very interested in this recording. And the security footage from my building's cameras. Helen lunges for the phone. Mark grabs her arm, finally seeing his mother clearly for the first time. You tried to kill him? His voice breaks. Your own husband's boss? Because Emily was teaching him piano. She was ruining everything. Helen shrieks. Just like that little bitch 20 years ago. I built this family. I protected us, Dash. You destroyed us. Richard's quiet words cut through her rage. And I let you do it. But not anymore. Sirens wail in the distance, growing closer. Helen's eyes dart around the room like a trapped animal's. Mark, she pleads, you can't let them do this. I'm your mother, Dash. You're a stranger. Mark releases her arm, stepping back. I don't know you at all. The police arrive with questions, handcuffs, and a warrant. As they lead Helen away, she turns to me one last time. I only wanted what was best for my family. No, I say quietly. You wanted control. There's a difference. Later, after the statements and signatures, Mark tries to apologize. Emily, I should have seen Dash. Stop. I hold up my hand. You're right. You should have seen. Should have believed me. Should have protected me. But you didn't. We can fix this, Dash. No, we can't. I twist my wedding ring off, placing it on Jessica's coffee table. Some things, once broken, stay broken. Where will you go? I think of Mr. Thompson's offer, the music program he wants to start, the studio space he's offering. Somewhere I can play piano as loud as I want. Richard clears his throat. Emily? For what it's worth. I'm sorry I waited so long to speak up. I look at this broken man, this enabler turned whistleblower, and feel something close to peace. Sometimes I tell him the best revenge isn't confrontation or violence. Sometimes it's just finally telling the truth. Through Jessica's window, I watch the sun rise over the city, painting everything in new light. For the first time in years, I can breathe freely. The piano studio smells of fresh paint and possibility. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, catching dust motes that dance above the newly polished grand piano, my piano now. Bought with the advance from Mr. Thompson's music program grant. Perfect spot for the waiting area, Jessica says, setting down a box of sheet music. Though you might want to paint over that. She points to the wall where Helen's mugshot still dominates the local newspaper's front page, pinned there during renovation. I study the headline, "Local Socialite Pleads Guilty to Attempted Murder." It stays, I decide. As a reminder. Of what? How to spot a psychopath. Of how silence enables abuse. I run my fingers along the piano keys, playing a soft chord. And how speaking up changes everything. The bell above the door chimes. Richard stands awkwardly in the entrance, holding a familiar envelope. "Mark asked me to deliver your final divorce papers." He sets them on the piano. "And this." He pulls out a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, I find my old metronome, the one Helen claimed she'd accidentally broken. "I fixed it," Richard says quietly. "Found it in Helen's closet while packing up her things." The steady tick-tock fills the studio as I set it running. Richard watches the pendulum swing, his face haunted. "She's asking to see you," he says finally. "Before they transfer her to state prison." "No." Emily Dash. "The last time I saw Helen, she was trying to convince a judge I was mentally unstable." I close the metronome, silencing it. I don't need to hear any more of her explanations. He nods, understanding. Mark's selling the house. Moving to Seattle, actually. Following in his boss's daughter's footsteps, the irony isn't lost on either of us. Something like that. Richard turns to leave, then stops. "You know, Helen always said revenge was about making people suffer. But watching you build this place, start over. Maybe true revenge is just living well." The bell chimes again as he leaves. I sit at the piano, playing the piece Mr. Thompson and I worked on during our first lesson. The notes fill the space, no longer constrained by Helen's manufactured migraines or Mark's passive enabling. Jessica sorts through registration forms for my first batch of students. "Speaking of living well, explain again how you got this grant?" Mr. Thompson recommended me to his daughter's music foundation. I smile, remembering his phone call from the hospital. Turns out she's been following Helen's career too. Called it poetic justice, that her scholarship program would help another of Helen's victims succeed. And the studio space? Let's just say Richard's guilt manifested in a very generous rental agreement. The afternoon light shifts, casting piano key shadows across the floor. Soon, these rooms will fill with students, with music, with the kind of life Helen tried to silence. My phone buzzes, a text from Mark. Sign the papers. "I'm sorry for everything. If you ever want to talk." I delete the message without responding. Some conversations, like some marriages, are better left finished. Jessica holds up a flyer design. "What do you think?" Sanders Piano Studio, where every voice matters. Perfect. I start playing again. A new melody this time, something original, still taking shape. Though maybe lose the Sanders part. I'm going back to my maiden name. New studio, new name, new life, Jessica muses. Helen would hate it. That's not why I'm doing it. The music swells under my fingers, growing stronger. Not anymore. Through the window, I watch people passing by, some pausing to peek in at the new business. Soon they'll bring their children, their dreams, their desire to create something beautiful. And I'll be here, teaching them what took me so long to learn. That sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in destroying your enemies, but in refusing to let them destroy you. I play on as the sun sets, each note a small victory, each melody a step further from the silence I once accepted as love.